Hey friends, welcome to the Invigorate Your Autoimmune Journey podcast. I'm the Invigorate founder and your co-host, Karin Wagner, and I'm joined by the amazing Chris Burton, DBATIS chaplain. Between Chris and I, we have more than 25 years of not only managing these diseases, but striving and thriving with these diseases. So come join us on these insightful but fun conversations as we're empowering each other together. Hey Chris, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Karin. I hope everything is well with you. How are you doing?
We've been good. I'm excited to get back into these insightful but fun conversations with you.
There it is. We had folks waiting for a little bit, but it's good to be back and chatting with you as always.
Absolutely. And today's topic is really fun and trending. I recently just heard about it, and so I'm curious if you've heard about it. And the comfort crisis. In this day and age, everything we have access to is at our fingertips.
Right.
The longest we have to wait is maybe an hour for food, and that's on the tail end. You might be getting a little hangry by that point.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Because we have access to everything, it is kind of created this ripple effect of modern day challenges.
Yes. I think what you're saying is so important. And I think that this is really essentially the problem of our time. I think that we have lost the value of the process because we've made convenience a god of ours. And so it doesn't matter, for example, I'll use something that doesn't seem that important. It doesn't matter that, we know the best kind of butter is churned and takes time, and if you go to like Amish country, Pennsylvania or somewhere, you're going to get amazing butter. We say, oh, that takes too long. I'm too far away from Amish country, or maybe it's cost prohibitive if I live very far away from it. I'll just go with this, stick of generic butter that's, at the store, no matter what the store is. We know that it's not going to be the best quality, but it saves us time. And we're willing to sacrifice quality, even to our own betterment. We're willing to sacrifice all those things just for something that's right there, rather than, wait the time, be a part of the process that can make it the best thing. I use an example that is really innocuous, but I think it runs through everything we do, including the much more serious things than a stick of butter.
Absolutely. And that's an instance where you are choosing to skip over the work to get to the end result. I think we even also have situations where there's no work, there's not even an option to do the work. So,
Right.
for example, a top of mind one is these digital detoxes. So we're on our phones
Yes.
constantly, and we're getting rewards. Our dopamine is releasing just by scrolling. But you can't add work to scrolling through your phone. So you're
No.
getting the rewards without doing anything whatsoever.
Right. And conversely, it's funny you're saying this because I saw a meme talking about, your phone. I saw a meme just this morning that was saying, criticizing, parents now to going on the road trip. Like, oh, my kid, they need their iPad. They need this. We got to put a movie on, all these different things to entertain. And the person who made the meme was reflecting on when they were in the back seat, all they had to do was, cheer for their favorite raindrop that was falling down the window. And boredom is a gift, especially for children. It's a gift. It's not something where, if you're a parent or a guardian, you should serve as a cruise director. Here's the next activity. Here's the next activity. And I think because adults don't want to be bored either, and they don't value stillness, they don't value mindfulness or meditation, or just the pursuit of inner peace, we're overstimulating ourselves. Something always has to be playing. We always have to be scrolling, and we're losing a sense of what it means to be truly human, what it means to be a full person as a result.
And to that point, us as adults, because we can't sit still, we're cramming our schedules full or reaching for our phones, doing everything to fill every last minute of our day.
Hmm.
And what I realized when it used to absolutely be like that, and when I was in corporate world and just trying to get all the things done, once I stopped, I was like, I am feeling so anxious. Like, I feel like I'm going to crawl out of my skin. What is wrong
Yeah.
with me? It's like, because I wasn't used to just like being a person and just staying
Right.
put for more than a few minutes, which is crazy.
Yeah, yeah, it's really like that. It's really, really like that. I think about just the sense of almost self-loathing that can develop, especially if you're in a corporate space or just any space that's very I think about like the way it's described on job descriptions, a fast-paced work environment. You know, that means you are not leaving work at 4 o'clock. That's all that means. And I think about what we lose because we think we have to stay productive perpetually. There's nothing human about that. It serves capitalism very well. It serves those who want to make more money very well, but it's not something that allows you to be a full person. And I think that balanced life, that desire to be a full person, it almost sounds like cheesy or too utopian to some people, but we're seeing it creep into everything else, including our health, including our relationships, including our society. People are so tense. I don't want to raise my voice or honk on the highway. I don't know what's the
Right.
last nerve for that person. You know what I mean? So I don't want to be the one. So we know that the society is overly anxious, overly tense, and yet we're not valuing these practices that we're talking about that would allow you to sort of get back in touch with yourself and get back in touch with the higher power.
Yeah, and you mentioned that when we are running ragged like that, we're feeling like we're productive, but in reality, we're declining because we're
Yeah.
not taking that time for ourselves to reset, recharge. Our bodies and our minds just aren't in a place to be able to be constantly going. You need that rest and time to reflect and just kind of breathe.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's really it's why like I enjoy uh the structure of a day and allowing yourself to have a good structure for your wake up times and like and what do you do. But a part of that structure has to be what I call landing the plane, right? So for my example, if I have to let's say we're recording a podcast or I'm on a panel or, there's something where I'm facilitating and it's closer to the end of the day, like let's say start 7 p.m., 8 p.m. I know that as an extrovert, get like wired and fired up. And I'm just so excited, just like, from the stimulation of conversation with other people, just being around other people, that I am going to need at least an hour to wind down. So for me, that might be watching a funny and familiar sitcom, maybe from the 90s, or playing a video game, or even just reading a book or listening to some jazz, like Izzy Gillespie or something. Like, I need something that's going to help me land the plane. And I don't know how well people are doing in general about landing the plane in their own lives. It feels like we're just in the air until you run out of gas and then drop out the sky.
And you literally just drop out of the sky.
Yeah, yeah. No descent. It's just plummet. Right. Yeah.
We talk about our day to day and making sure that you set your day up well and end it well. I think it's really important to make sure that throughout the day you're checking in.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I read was that we as humans or Americans on
Yeah.
average spend 90% of our time inside.
Yeah.
So that's 21 plus hours a day.
Oh,
And just the lack of fresh air and sunlight, that's got to
right.
mentally get to you after a while.
I mean, there's a reason why solitary confinement and house arrest are punishments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a reason. Like it's not a reward to be inside all day. That's not a reward. You know, and I will see folks come up on my Instagram, like For You page that practice things like grounding, where you're barefoot touching grass, and I know it's become like a popular insult online to tell someone go touch some grass, but no, seriously, please go touch some grass. Like this is not good. 21.6 hours inside, there's someone living in Antarctica doing experiments who's getting more outdoor time than
Right.
the average American. It is a problem. That's really a problem.
Well, and inside it's like we're heating and cooling our houses or our office spaces. So if you think
Mhm.
about it, our bodies are probably always in or close to always being in like 70-ish degree temperatures.
Right.
So by getting outside, it actually doesn't fully shock your system, but it just gives you a little bit of a wake up call. Be like, oh,
Hmm.
okay, I'm not in this completely steady state all the time. And that's good
Yeah.
for you and your system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think about when we all had to be inside with quarantine, how much of a premium I placed on being outside. At the time during quarantine, I was living on Long Island, and I was so thankful I could just go outside and just like touch a tree. Just breathe deeply. And I think even if you find yourself in a more urban location, just take a walk down the street. Like do what you can to make sure that you're spending some time outside, and get out of the concrete jungle once in a while, and visit someplace. It can be a beach, it can be mountains, whatever your jam is, the woods. Just make sure you spend some time outside. I think it benefits your health, it benefits your spiritual life, and it benefits your mind.
The simplest thing of going for a 10-minute walk outside can help every aspect of your life. It's
No
amazing how
question.
something so simple and little
Right.
can have such a big effect.
Absolute. Absolute. Because think about how much this is tied to, you know, going back, I'm stuck on the 21.6. How some of that time of the remaining hours, goes at 2.4 hours, is you in your car. Americans, we're very much like, if we're not inside the home, we're inside of our car. And if you're not really spending that time just like walking around, or just being outside, if you have mobility issues, it comes at a great detriment to us. And I don't think we fully appreciate it because it just seems so normal to, work in an office if that's what you have to do, and then get in your car and drive 30 minutes, hour, however long it takes. And you just go right back into the house and until tomorrow morning. It's just not a healthy pattern yet.
It's not, and I think that's why we have to be, even for me, you have to be very intentional about getting outside. I can't believe how challenging it's been for me to actually just walk out the door and go for
Yeah,
a
yeah,
walk.
yeah.
But it's in the beginning, it's like I really have to make a conscious effort to do that.
Who that?
And I think that is what goes back to the comfort crisis. We're just
Right.
in our elements going through the day to day, and we really have to make a conscious effort to separate ourselves from some of these conveniences that we have.
Hmm. That's the truth. When I hear the comfort crisis, I think about the adage about how cyclical time is, in the sense that, difficult times make strong people, but strong people make good times, but then good times make weak people, and weak people make tough times. And just thinking about, if we're so stuck on comfort becomes like our chief aim. We're not going to be producing our best. We're not going to be able, we won't have the ability to produce our best because all we know is comfort and convenience. It's to our overall detriment.
Yeah, and it goes back what you were saying earlier, your story about the butter. So we've
Mm.
completely lost the appreciation for hard work and actually doing work before we get into this state of comfort. And because
Right.
of that, we've lost our just appreciation for what it means to be human because we are meant
Right.
to continue to strive and grow. And that's why we face so many challenges. It's like we would be bored out of our minds if we were living in utopia, and we would create our own
Oh,
problems.
yeah, yeah. And think about what that says. The fact that things could be going perfectly, like optimal, running exactly the way it should, and that would inspire boredom. We would take that as a problem. Like it'd be a problem that things were perfect. That to me says that there's some sort of inability to be satisfied. Like that is just to be something that's like no matter how much you provide and love for that person, there's like a hole in the cup. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Something's wrong.
for sure. And we're on our phones,
Yeah.
we're going through our day to day, but it's created this loneliness epidemic that we're not truly connecting with each other because
Hmm.
we're not going outside. We're not like we're going through the motions, maybe having logistical conversations, but to truly take the time to connect with one another, like that requires active listening and engagement, and
Yeah.
to be able to pull yourself away from all the distractions to have an effective conversation has gotten more challenging.
No question. No question. Yeah, it's a sense of, in my estimation, being present with others necessitates being present with yourself. I think about the times where I've fallen victim to this, and I've perpetuated this, where you're talking to someone and you can tell they are not in the conversation, or you're saying to me, "Hey, Chris, like I was on my way to the store the other day." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah," and I'm distracted. I may actually have my phone in my hand. I'm just all of my body language is saying I'm everywhere but here. And I think that it's impossible for us to be truly available to one another as people if we're not even available to ourselves. If a still moment has to be filled immediately. Like, oh, let me check. Did I get my inbox to zero yet? Like, if that immediately what we're doing, there's something. It's almost like you're not comfortable in your own home. Your body being your first home.
Yeah, I think that goes back to when I felt like I was going to crawl out of my skin because I didn't
Yeah.
know how to just exist.
Right. Right.
So for me to get kind of course correct in that area, I started very small doing meditation practices,
Right.
following guided meditation and whatnot. How do you ensure that, well, have, I should ask, because right now you are saying that you know that you need to take an hour to decompress to
Yeah.
before you can move on to the next thing. Were you always like that? And how have you like progressed in the space of making sure that you are giving yourself the space that you need?
Yeah. I think I love the part of the question say where you always like that, because I find myself reflecting a lot on like choices I made when I was younger and like just the way I responded to things. And I try to give myself grace. I was like, okay, you were 17, you were 21, or whatever the case. But I think there was so much chasing happening. When you're a young person, a young ambitious person, you're always going after the next thing. So, speaking to a group of people would not mean like, oh, let me wind down. It's like, oh, I have all this energy, let me go out. Right. And so you're really just, instead of pacing yourself, like, folks who listened to our episodes before have heard me talk about how lupus has me playing baseball instead of playing like, basketball or running track, or playing soccer, some sport where you're just like flying the whole time. I find myself much more intentional and methodical about how I take care of myself and how I interact. And I think knowing that you need to recharge is a very motivating thing. Also, having this sense of there's nothing out there for you, like you don't need to greet the sun as it rises. Like it's okay. It still don't come up without you. So just take care of yourself and rest, which is something that 20-year-old me would never have appreciated, but I appreciate now for sure.
I love that you used the word intentional
Mm,
because I think you absolutely have to be intentional to one, first learn about yourself and what you need. And when you
mm,
start to understand your body, it's actually my mantra for this year is being more intentional about how I'm spending my time, how I am acting with whoever I'm engaging with, whether that's you,
yeah.
Chris, or my family or coworkers, whatever. It's like just being more thoughtful about where they're at and how I'm
Mm,
coming across has created just much more meaningful dialogues and experiences than it has in the past.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because it really it gives it a greater sense of meaning. And I think this is really important to note because as we get older, we start to realize how those interactions like are truly valuable, right? Like, when you're a child or a teenager and, your parents are like, well, we're going to see your cousin or we're going to see your aunt or your grandson or whatever. There's kind of a sense like you don't fully appreciate unless there's been some sort of traumatic or um extreme circumstances. You don't really appreciate how valuable and how precious that is, right? You're just like, oh, I haven't gonna see grandma again. Okay, saw grandma Tuesday. I won't see grandma again. And you don't fully appreciate that one day you may want to see grandma, but grandma's not there, or you may want to see your cousin, but your cousin moved overseas, or whatever the case is. And I think when we take care of ourselves well, it allows, to your point, not just like the valuable nature of it, but you're able to like make sure that you're giving it your best. And what the best represents in this instance is being fully present and really, being there in that interaction rather than just, that interaction just being one of the stops along the way. Because everyone can tell when they don't have a person's attention, no matter what the conversation. You can tell when a person is like everywhere but there.
Yeah. And you're not even getting more for yourself, but you're giving more. And so it's everyone's winning in that
Right.
situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
With these things, they seem like small things in
Hmm.
silo. Whether
Right.
you're getting time outside, whether you're eating clean food, whether you have a
That part.
mindful meditation practice, they
Hmm.
seem small, but aggregated, if we're not being mindful of any of these things, it all starts to bubble up. The awesome example of the plane just falling out of the sky.
Yeah, right, right.
Right. And so I think to make sure that we're running optimally and flying where we need to be, we really have to make a conscious effort of looking at each of these things.
Hmm.
You had mentioned value in terms of interacting and connecting with others, and that is huge as far as creating meaningful relationships and adding purpose to your life. On the other side of it, I think, as we think about how hard it is for me to get out and go for a walk or
Hmm.
do grounding or whatever, the benefit of having an autoimmune disease is that it kind of forces you to pay attention to these other things that wouldn't be so obvious to others.
Right. Right.
And by having such a sensitivity to just our health in general, whether it's
Hmm.
food and stress and all of it, it's these are tools that can help our situations, even though it's not like swallow these meds. Make sure you're exercising 3 to 5 days a week. It's small things that you can do to really build yourself up. And I think that's
Hmm.
been the biggest differentiator for me in my meditation practice. I'm not all in, I'm not doing hours on end, but
Right.
10 minutes a couple of times a day, like that has been massive for my
Hmm.
anxiety and just stress in general. So I think my point is that even though these can seem silly in small doses, they do have compounding beneficial effects.
Yeah, and I love these examples that you're offering, Karen, because to me, people often make perfect the enemy of good.
Yeah.
So because they can't run a marathon, they're not going to try to run on the treadmill at all, right? Because they haven't become enlightened when they meditate, they're not going to do like the 10 minutes a day thing or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like I think that people often use these ideals or these like paragon examples as a reason to not do anything, and and it's cheating yourself because yes, you may not know how, or it may seem like impossible to you to say, like, I'm going to like completely get rid of eating potato chips or something like that, right? But so that doesn't mean that you can't start to say, you know what? Maybe I don't buy a bag of potato chips every day, or you say, you know what? I'm going to have potato chips as a Saturday reward or cheat day sort of deal. Like people act as if there aren't levels between, this sort of like, no, I am a vegan who has a farm and I make my own vegan butter by hand and scratch, like there has to be levels and people have to be kinder to themselves. I really believe that part of what we're talking about is that people use the term self-love, I think sometimes in a very harmful way. But I think there's a way to be truly kind to yourself. And if you truly love yourself and demonstrate through that kindness, it will spill into the ways that you treat other people.
Yeah. Is all or nothing and taking a one step or 1% better approach. That is a great way to ease yourself into it and start to get used to having to do the work. Because it's like
Right.
you're not going to be able to start out running a marathon or even a
No.
5K. It's like maybe
Right.
you can make it down to the end of the street and back. But
That's a win.
that's a win, and it's still work. You're still doing the work.
Yeah.
You get much
Absolutely.
more benefit health and physical wise after that than staying home and deciding that you can't do anything.
No question. No question. I think about even a shift I've made. I enjoy working out. And this is a shift I made in my self-talk. I used to talk to myself very like aggressively and like almost angrily if I was trying to like, lift a heavy weight or, like push myself in running. And it's really now for me about giving myself like affirming talk. Like you can do this. You've done this before. Like you're being very encouraging. And I think that I just want everyone to examine the way that they talk to themselves, treat themselves, because that's the difference between you saying, you know what, I didn't make the marathon, but I'm going to try to run down the street. Because you have to give yourself the confidence to say small things count. That it's not as if you being able to run down the street means nothing. You being able to run down the street might mean that you can run a couple of blocks, which might mean you can run a mile or two. And things can progress if you stick with it and have the discipline and the tenacity to say, I won't let this thing beat me. But it's really, in my estimation, it connects back to our self-talk, which ultimately connects back to what was poured into us. But we have an opportunity to help reverse some of that by really actively and radically being kind to ourselves.
Yeah. So I used to have a lot of that as well, the negative self-talk, and
Mm-hmm.
it was hard for me to replace that.
Yeah.
But by starting my journaling practice and actually just kind of working through it, then stuff would come out and it's like, oh, okay. And it would
Mm-hmm.
give me time to process and be like, okay, now I can think about this differently. And then
Yeah.
you don't have to continue to keep doing the journal, but like once it can help you gain those insights when because you're literally in your own head and sometimes it can be
Mm-hmm.
hard to decipher what's what when you're kind of spinning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Something, and it sounds like something that, like, you know, almost like little kids playing freeze tag. You have to have base, right? Like, so what's your home base? And that's what it sounds like you're able to produce for yourself as a sense of home base. Why everything wants to spin. You're like, oh no, no. let me find my chair. This is my chair where I don't spin anymore, you know?
Yeah. I also came across a really interesting story and tip for this is you
Okay.
can either like do tallies. It has to be some sort of physical action.
Yes.
So you even
Mm-hmm.
have like small cups and you could fill it with change. And
Mm-hmm.
every time you catch yourself with a negative thought, you pull one out and put it in the negative bucket, and then you have the
Mm-hmm.
positive one, and vice versa. And
Mm-hmm.
so it just the action helps reinforce reminding how you're thinking about yourself and talking to yourself.
Totally. Totally.
That's
And,
kind
and I,
of
I know, I think it's very cool. I think it's cool because it also helps you get towards the point of doing things that, you know, a year ago, a couple of years ago, even a few months ago, you'd have thought was impossible. All based on you really, really emphasizing this practice that you're talking about. I think um people have underestimated what they're capable of. Right? And I think if people really were made more confident in themselves and confident in one another, we could do something really special as people.
I love that you bring this up because fear of failure is a huge issue when it comes to the comfort crisis.
Right, right.
Like, people don't want to take chances because we have everything at our fingertips. We don't want to. And the fear of social rejection or any sort
Mm-hmm.
of negativity can have a crippling effect that we're like, okay, we're not going to take action. And that's a whole nother downward spiral that you can go down.
Yeah, absolutely, 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 absolutely. Um, I think, you know, and this is part of my theology, but I really do believe that there are two distinct lenses that people employ in life, like one of scarcity or one of abundance. So you could have an idea, let's say you had an idea for invigorate, and someone could say to you, "Oh, but that could never work." Like immediately, as soon as you come into the room excited with the idea, guess what? I just realized you can. Like, I have an idea. I want to do blah blah blah. And before you could ever really fully get out the whole vision that you had, it's like, you know, like you know, the birthing at the seams of this vision, the person just hits you with, "Oh, but this is why it can't happen," and someone else is already doing that. They're doing it really well, and all these reasons, and it just like deflates you, until you just turn into like a raisin. And we think of that in the general society as like, you know, being wise or being like, you know, savvy, like it's like not politically, but just like, you know, generally conservative, like, oh wow, like this person doesn't just like waste their opportunity, they're thinking smart. But to me, an abundance mindset of listening to your idea and saying, "Oh, that reminds me of this," but with your take on it, it should become this. Like I think hearing an idea that's special and adding affirmation to it, helping them shape it so it can be ready for the world, that to me is an abundance mindset. Yeah. No one's made an airplane before. We didn't even have the word for it. No one's traveled by air. But at some point, people were audacious enough and had enough of an abundance mindset to say, you know what, we can do this. And guess what? Before they did it, they failed. They failed a lot. They failed more than they succeeded because they only needed to succeed one time. And I think people need to get past that fear of failure. No one's going to come yank you off the stage like the Apollo, right? Like this is something where if you really believe that this is something you have to do, at least try. You don't want to live a life of regret saying you never tried it, you know?
I think a big part of that failure stems from social media. We're
Mm-hmm.
starting to measure our self-worth based on the likes and the interactions that we get, but we're not seeing the failures behind the scenes. And the story has been lost, and just seeing the images can easily take you to a place that's not bright and where you should be.
Agreed. People forget that social media is a highlight reel,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm not posting necessarily, you know, my failures. I'm not necessarily posting all the times I got humiliated, but I will post that, you know, things couldn't be better. And if you're looking at that, and that's your whole basis of it, especially if you're comparing yourself to people you don't even know, like you have no context for, we're losing out, you know?
And I think that comparison mindset is a lot like the scarcity mindset because
Yeah.
you're not having whatever whoever has that you're
Hmm.
comparing yourself to.
Right. I'll never be like them, whatever the attribute is. You just feel defeated. You don't say kind things to yourself. You don't feel kind towards yourself because you are comparing yourself to that person.
Yeah, but it's like, no, you won't ever be that person because you're you and you're doing you.
Right, right. Like Beyonce is incredible. Beyonce can never be me. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and I can never be Beyonce. That's all right. It's fine.
For
You know?
sure. Yeah. But going back to your Invigorate example and tying it to social media, we're a startup, so the likes and metrics on social aren't huge.
Yeah.
Could easily get caught up on that. But as
Hmm.
I was telling you before we started recording, is we're starting to do these health and wellness events, and the conversations and engagement that I have with people and their experiences with autoimmune diseases is like, okay, I am providing value. I am helping others. And so I think all of us, even if we're not obsessed with social media and on our phones all the time, it's still a good
Hmm.
reminder that the value in how we're serving others and treating ourselves is what's important.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because it's like what I think it becomes a question of ultimately what really matters.
Yeah.
You know, like you could have a post on Instagram that made, 400,000 likes and like, whoa, like we never had this many likes. But what are you going to do with that? Can you go to any bank and say I have 400,000 likes? Or can you, like, how are you going to turn that into something? And conversely, you can do a lot of things without a whole lot of likes, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Chris, what are you actively working on that you're trying to stay out of the comfort crisis on?
Ooh, I love that. So the number one thing in that regard is I'm working on a book. And I really am embracing the process. I got my first rejection letter from a press a couple of months ago, and they wrote it so nicely. I saved it. I said, you know what? If you're gonna get rejected like this. And it was just such a beautiful way of expressing their hopes for what I was working on, but that it wasn't a good time for their schedule. But just being able to take something like from an outline and just like, putting words onto a paper and then changing those words and then being like, hey, what do you think about this? And then like, oh, what about that? It's the whole process of it that if I didn't embrace that, let's say, for whatever reason, I just put this whole book into like I started like Chat GPT or something to say, write me a 300-page book on blah blah blah. I don't think that'd feel very satisfied in a way that I'm sure once this book is published and people are able to like hold it in their hands, it would be very satisfying to be at that. So I'm embracing that process right now.
One, that's amazing. Two, if you did do the Chat GPT, you would have skipped over the work and just
Oh,
got you would have missed out on all the reward.
can you imagine all the rewards in the work? All of it.
All of it.
All of it's in the work. Yeah.
So do
That'd be
you
cool.
specifically carve out time in your day to make sure you have time for this process?
Yeah, I've been doing a very fun thing where on my desktop, it's a large screen, so I put like Hulu or some sort of like platform on one side of the screen, and then my writing on the other side. And so I'll just watch like my favorite movies while I'm working. Like the other week, I watched Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. I didn't see the movie in so long. I was like, I forgot how much I love this movie. Like the good old heist. And I was like, this movie is so much fun. I
That's a
mean,
blast from the past for sure.
right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm not watching new movies on this. I'm only going back to like, oh man, I was like. how many movies have Pacino and De Niro been together? I want to see one of those, and that's why I just watch it. And I think it's allowing me to, you know, do something I enjoy, while also I'm in this process of creating something that I really hope will be enjoyable. You know?
Yeah. I was gonna ask, how can you write and watch movies, but it's movies you've already seen and you kind of know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the beats of it, right? It's not. Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I can't be like, oh, I'm watching Dune 2 while I'm writing. No, I can't do that. I need to. It needs to be something where like play the hits, and I know where this is going. It's almost like a comfort, even though like no, he's a rough movie, but at the same time, just knowing like okay, I know where this is going. I just kind of just want to have it on as a muse, and then I go back to what I'm doing.
So you bring up an interesting point though, and I think a great tip for people who are trying to do something. I
Hmm.
think if you compare it with something you really enjoy, whether it's listening to a podcast on a walk
Hmm.
and or maybe adding an extra reward at the end of it, that can be huge incentive to get you
Oh
into
yeah,
whatever process that you need to get into.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think people think too often that work has to be suffering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I have found so much joy in doing the difficult work, whether it be, like physical, you're trying to, get stronger or faster, or, you're trying to solve a particular problem. I think if you use a lens of joy, which to me isn't the same thing as happiness, but a lens of joy, it allows you to see the greater picture of it and say, okay, we can get through this. Like to me, joy is the fuel we need to endure. And then happiness is like a little cupcake at the end of the road, but like, you can't live off the cupcake. You guys keep going.
Yeah, and I think there is enjoyment about going through the process and knowing that you're pushing yourself and that you're growing. I
Hmm.
read the other day that it's a good sign when you're frustrated and irritated about when you're trying to learn something new be-
Yes.
because it means you're on the brink of actually figuring it out.
Right, right,
And
right.
there's enjoyment in that. And now when I'm doing stuff that I'm like, man, this is really hard and irritating, I'm
Hmm.
over it. It's like, okay, I'm close. Like I gotta be close,
Yeah,
And it,
right.
it brings joy to the whole process and leaning into it.
No question. But Karen, think about how many people quit before they get to that final part that you're talking about. You know, they're learning an instrument, they're learning a new language, whatever the challenge is. And before they get to the part that you're just describing, the other side of the mountain, they're just like, I can't do it. But once again, it's that self talk, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so important to build up that muscle memory. So
Hmm.
even if whatever the incremental step is that you're willing to commit to, just do it once. And if you can do it
Yeah.
once, you can probably do it twice. And who cares if then you fall off the wagon and you do it again? Like
Do it again.
eventually it'll start to build some sort of consistency over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the thing, it's not using small sample sizes,
Yeah.
right? Someone could be entering into investments in the stock market, and they're like, oh, I'm going to buy this stock, and then the stock drops a couple of points, and then, oh, I'm getting my money out. This thing was a mistake. But over time, that stock over like, a 3-year window, 5-year window, 10-year window may always go up. And I think we rob ourselves when we let anxiety and that sort of impulse have the final word. No, be patient, be calm, pay attention, right? If the bottom's falling out of everything, do what you need to do. But at the same time, there's something to be said about not just being impulsive and erratic, but being calm and being that sort of calmness for other people, that peace for other people.
Yeah, it goes back to being intentional and being in the moment.
Yeah,
That
certainly, certainly,
fear
certainly.
and anxiety is always about looking forward. And if you just focus on now, that
Hmm.
stuff will start to tune out.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Was it regret keeps you trapped in the past? Anxiety keeps you trapped in the future. But
Yeah.
the present is a gift, you know?
Yeah. One last tip that I want to share, and I'm curious
Mm.
your thoughts on it, is as humans, we tend to just add stuff to fix the problem. Oh, I got to go outside more. I got to do more of this, more of this. But when we're constantly adding, it can be overwhelming and it can
Hmm.
bury us. So when you're talking about making sure you're calm and creating your own space, you think about how we separate ourselves from this comfort crisis. We also
Mm.
have to think about what can we give up to create space for these new
There it is.
intentions. As we've talked about earlier in the show, there's just so much stimulation and so much noise around us that in itself can be a barrier to even try new things because there's just
Hmm.
too much. So really taking that time to reflect internally about how am I spending my time? Do I really need to be doing all this? What can I do to create that space for healthier changes?
Yeah, I love that because I think without the strategies you're emphasizing, the thing that's supposed to help you can become another burden,
Yeah.
right? And so, it may be healthy for you to say, I'm going to lift weights after work. But if you're not taking something away, then lifting weights after work is going to become another burden, right? So it can't be. My stress relief used to be playing Call of Duty after work. I can't say I need to lift weights, but I also have to play Call of Duty. Like, no, maybe you're substituting. Maybe Call of Duty now becomes a Saturday treat, or some sort of way of uh figuring it out. I very much believe it's important to try to streamline your life as best as you can.
Yeah.
People are overdoing. I can't emphasize this enough, Karen. Just people are doing a whole lot and in a mediocre way. It'd be very different if we were just all doing things and it was brilliant work. It's just a lot of meh, and that's not great. And the mess shouldn't live in your life. And I think if we're able to say, what do I do really well? What are the things I have to do so I can really emphasize like it's important to do this well, right? Like that. If you're a parent, you can't just say, "Well, I'm just a meh" when it comes to like being with my children. No, like try to get better at that. Like they get
Yes,
one
please
child
do.
thing. You just say, "I'm sure I heard the podcast and streamlining my life. I don't take care of these kids anymore." No, 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 no. We didn't tell you that. Still take care of those kids, but it's really important just to really optimize your life as best you can by really saying, what am I doing that's taking up a lot of time that isn't a have to do, it's not a responsibility essentially, but I've given it too much of the pie chart in my life.
Mhm. A very simple example of that is for a while we were watching one show every night.
Yeah.
But if you think about like an hour a night, that obviously adds up quickly. And
Oh yeah.
giving up that hour has freed up my time to do more stuff that I want to do. And
Can't
at
imagine,
first it's
right?
like, oh man, I want to watch my favorite show. Well, then I
Hmm.
started watching my favorite show while I was biking, going back to
Right.
how backing, right? And figuring out how to fit it in. So I love the streamlining because and you can't do it all at once. I feel like you have to make small single optimizations. Be like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then
Yes.
all of a sudden you get to a place where it's like, this is amazing.
Hmm. Hmm. That's really it. It's because you're less burdened. You almost what was it? Erica Badu had that song about bag lady, you gonna hurt your back carrying all them bags like that. It's like we're walking down life with 25 giant bags on us. Like we weren't meant to live this way. This was not the intention. This was not the plan. So lay down some of those bags. Save your back, save your knees. Like we have to take care of ourselves.
Okay, so next episode is gonna be about how to streamline your life.
There it is. There it is. These episodes flow into each other, y'all. So here we go. Streamline your
Mhm.
life. I'm here for it.
All optimization tips and tricks.
There it is.
Chris, thank you for being here. This was such a fun, interesting conversation about the comfort crisis.
Yes, yes. Thank you for putting it together as always. Thank you.
Yeah, and for all of you who are listening, thank you for joining us. Please drop us a comment of what you're trying to break free of in the comfort crisis and any
Yes,
optimization tips you have on streamlining. We're excited to have you here and come back again. Thanks, Chris.
absolutely. Take care, everyone.